Anna Rosa Parker, how are you today?
I'm great. How are you?
I'm doing all right. I appreciate you coming on and sharing your story with the audience today.
Yeah, thank you for inviting me.
Yeah, let me go ahead and give a brief introduction for you so the audience kind of gets a feel for who you are before we get into the conversation. You're a creative storytelling expert and a heart math coach known for guiding individuals to harness their voice and narrative through your Evoke framework, blending heart centered coaching with practical creativity. You're a former actor turned brand strategist. You transitioned from acting and advertising to building a meaningful career helping others find clarity and purpose. To name a few, Baccarat Hotel, One Hotels, Soli Organics, and even Venus Williams. You're an intuitive mentor, fusing intuition, cultural heritage, and strategic thinking to help creatives unlock potential. Your NYC and Iceland based coach, offering global insight shaped by life between two worlds, focusing on soul led leadership. And you're a resilient career inventor. Your personal journey of reinvention informs your mission and supports others in creative recovery and transformation. It's a very rich life that you've had so far.
Thank you.
So, like I mentioned, this is going to be very conversational. I only have one
Mhm.
structured question, and it's always the first. And that is, where were you born, and what was life like as a kid for Anna?
Oh, that's a cool question. I was born in Reykjavik, Iceland, and I was raised up there. Um, Iceland is very popular or known nowadays, but when I was growing up there, it was very spare. It was like austere. It was very minimal, very Scandinavian, you could call it depressing. Um,
Okay,
but as a child, I think that infused my creativity because there was nothing sort of a given to us or made for us. I would hang with my sister and my cousins. We would, definitely have a few pranks up our sleeves, like always. We were a little bit wicked. Um, but again, I think that sort of like gave me that creativity and storytelling that you're always kind of creating your own world. There was, for
yeah,
example, there was no TV over summertime for like 6 weeks, and there was never TV on Thursdays.
okay,
And so TV was not, and when there was TV, I mean, it was a holiday if they showed a Hitchcock. It was very often like sort of Russian or yeah, Eastern European material was a little harsh. I
okay,
mean, and then the Danes are funny, so there was some Danish material, but that's sort of it. We didn't understand, we didn't know what like America was. I mean,
okay,
when I realized what that was later, I was very interested in it.
yeah,
Um, but I was physical. I grew up in a household that was my mom remarried when I was 4. And my older sister and I, we were, the two of us, and then my mom and my stepdad had two more children. I
okay,
didn't really grow up with my biological dad. He was sort of in and out of my life, like some of them are.
yeah,
Um, and but yeah, it was physical. It was very creative. I was always making some kind of a books. I was not a good drawer, but I could sort of like come up with a story and just, like staple those little books together. I was a full on always playing some kind of a role, whether I was playing with dolls, Barbies, or just out in the world. I was always visualizing. I didn't know that I was actually creating my future, but I started there, I believe. Because
okay,
I created, and for example, when my mom would ask me to babysit my younger siblings, she would, go run errands or whatever in the afternoon, I would transform the house, redecorate, I would change their clothes, I would put them, make them pose and take pictures, like running my own little magazine. So I was a
yeah.
very visual person, visual and a big dreamer, always into some kind of a story. Yeah. That's pretty much it in a nutshell.
Fascinating, very fascinating. Did your mother and your stepfather, did they have any creative juices flowing through them at that point in time?
Well, my mom was creative in that way. She was very visual, and she would always buy these magazines that were very, fabulous. They were from other countries in Scandinavia, like Denmark and Sweden. They had good magazines. So she liked that. She liked to create like a home, and she was very creative in that way. And she was very much into storytelling. I think she should have written at least children's books, but she didn't, she was making kids.
Right.
Uh, and my dad, my stepdad, he was, electrical engineer. He was out on ships. So,
Okay.
fishermen and some poets are is sort of in my story, in my the people that I came from, if you will. It's
Gotcha.
it's
Gotcha.
not very glamorous, but it's very original, I think. Like some of the
Yeah.
background that I yeah.
How about your grandparents? Were they very present in your life as a kid?
Yeah, yeah, my mom's parents, well, my mom's parents were around. My grandfather was an entrepreneur. He came from tiny village, traveled with his mom to come to Reykjavik, the city, and he wanted to create something and make something of himself. And he studied carpentry, and he was also a cobbler, and he opened businesses, bought real estate, and he did really well. And then he had a stroke, and so he was forever paralyzed after. That was only
Oh,
in his like 40s. He was very young.
okay.
Um, and so he was sort of, yeah, he was just not able to do anything after that. My grandma was an incredible like sewer. Like I said, I was very visual, and I would create something in my head, kind of an outfit or a dress, and I would find the fabric and take it to her, and she would make what I wanted. And I was very much close with my grandmother. She also knew English. My parents didn't really speak English.
Okay.
So I would go to her and I was not good at English at first. It was really struggling with that language until I moved to the States.
Yeah.
In that way, like the vocabulary was just not coming to me easily. But my grandma was there, and so she would, sort of tutor me in a way.
Where did your grandmother get that English influence from? Was it through television or radio?
Through school, she was one of
Okay.
these people who, walked the extra few miles to go to a school that taught English and it was all women's school. So
Wow.
she was cool like that. Yeah.
Yeah. Fascinating. Fascinating. How about school for you? School, I would assume, is completely different than how it is here in the United States. There.
Yeah, I
Yes.
mean, yeah, it's definitely different, I would say, in two ways. Well, some of it is just like a year or two, in grade school or, yeah. But I think what's different is that it's not very sort of a conversational. It's very much you wait and you raise your hand if you need to and want to speak. It's
Okay.
not back and forth. So I went to University of Washington in Seattle in my 20s. I had to wait a little bit. We can get to that later, but I was very at awe and impressed and kind of shy about this back and forth
Yeah.
speaking with a teacher because I'm used to sort of a more, I guess, almost military-like how the school was
Yes.
there.
Yes.
But I went to a few different schools. We moved, and I would either not want to go to the school we moved to, or I would go back to my old school. So I had a little bit of a free will in that. So I went to like four or five different schools, and we go from after kindergarten, so first grade
Yeah.
through like 10th is like grade school.
Okay.
And then you go to something called mentaskole. That's almost like a junior college into college.
Okay.
And those are 4 years. And then the universities their BA is usually just 3 years.
Gotcha.
So it's a little
Gotcha.
bit different. But it's really in that it's, you just have to listen and you're sort of told what to do. But I had a really good teacher in my teenage years who was actually my Danish teacher. We were, so our languages were Icelandic, Danish, English, and then you choose between French or German.
Okay.
And my Danish teacher, she just had this, um, I don't know, compassion and became sort of my mentor and was always talking to me when I was hanging out with the, quote unquote wrong crowd and things like that. So that was very, and I just ran into her the other day at a restaurant. It's kind of funny because it's so long ago, but Iceland is like that. You run into people, your Danish teacher, even.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Fascinating.
But it
Did
wasn't, it wasn't so. It wasn't, I think it's also the era, and it's just not as, they're not fostering you in a way. They always wanted me to do more athletic stuff, so they tried to get me into that. And I was in
okay.
gymnastic, and I was very athletic. I was a skier, but I wanted to get more into the arts, but that
Yeah.
wasn't sort of, it wasn't around as much. There was no sort of a fostering, figuring out who you want to be. So I feel like I'm still making those books because I started that early, those little worlds.
Yeah.
And you kind of have to figure a lot out on my own. Maybe because it was a little bit out of the box, I wasn't sort of a typical how I went, I went to those different schools and all that. But yeah, I had to figure it out a lot on my own, I feel like.
Did the weather in Iceland kind of play into some of that mindset of creativity? Did you have traditional seasons there versus what it's like here in the States?
Yeah, they're traditional for us. They are,
Yeah.
and yeah, they're so winter is pitch black. I mean, you see the sun from like 11 in the morning till 3 in the afternoon. If you don't go outside during that time, you're just gonna see darkness.
Yeah.
Um, But the darkness, the pitch black has some kind of a blue hues. It's really cool. I think it's magical, especially after having left and come back.
Yeah.
Um, the summers are the opposite. So it's daylight. You just see the sun, drop and come back up pretty much.
Okay.
This season, this spring, especially, I love fall there. I love autumn. It's beautiful, purpley colors and really stunning. That's my
Yeah.
favorite season, and that's the most sort of what we, traditional or normal way of sleeping. There's, light in the day and dark at night.
Right. Right. Okay. Was your schooling being as regimented as it was? Um, did you find that it was easy for you to participate and when you were asked to participate, or were you still kind of maybe not willing to step up and be engaging at those times?
Yeah, that's a good question. I did participate when we were, we would be set into groups sometimes to, work on a group project. And I was never sort of I could either lead or just like kind of be quiet and do whatever they wanted. I remember struggling to have an opinion if other people are having opinions too. I thought like, why not? I'm not gonna bother. Either I lead the pack or I just like sort of let them do their thing.
Right.
I felt like
Right.
that was just definitely one of it. And then, then we're all trying out things when I'm like, 14, I'm not interested in gymnastics so much anymore and hang out with some people that are like, I don't know, they're acting out and but eventually I kind of got over that. So I asked if I could go to another school near my grandmother's house and I did that to finish my last year in grade school, like equivalent to kind of high school.
Right.
Um, yeah, the weather though, what's interesting when you grow up in all that, all that darkness and then the lightness, you don't know anything else. So that's very normal to you. But it's when
Yeah.
you leave and you come back and you need the eye mask and everything is like it's more intense than you realized that it was. And it's pitch black, you're 6 year old and you just go outside and you walk to school and by yourself and
Right.
it's yeah.
Interesting. The uh, did you use your creativity to connect with a lot of the other students as well, or did you have maybe a select few that you kind of gravitated more to during
Yeah,
your
I think
elementary?
so. Select few. Yeah.
Okay.
And it was creative in many ways. It came down to creativity was, yeah, as a visual person, I was always like designing my room. I knew what I wanted to wear. I was very opinionated about my wardrobe. And then we would create, stories and worlds and, pranksters and it was just sort of and then there were different neighborhoods and but the neighborhood that I spent the most time in, they call like the hood now. I don't necessarily, I mean, I don't know. I haven't been there for a minute, but
Yeah.
there were there were some little mini gangsters there, I guess, because people from the next neighborhood would come to my neighborhood and they would be afraid of getting beaten up.
Okay.
And then there was a war one time between those two neighborhoods up there a little bit in the outskirts. They're still in the city.
Oh wow.
Uh, yeah, they were throwing rocks and I mean, it was in the news. It was a little wild when I think about it now.
Right. Right.
Yeah, but and it was interesting because I went to a few different schools. I've never been invited to like the reunion of any school. And then
Oh.
just
Okay.
like a couple of days ago, I got an invite to this Facebook group that they were, you know, my just people from that neighborhood who are in the same year, there's a few different classes. And
Yeah.
I was so excited that even if I might not be able to make it, I'm probably going to be in New York, but I felt so included. So we're still like that. It's like I hadn't been invited to a reunion until now. And I was like, oh my God, this is so cool. So it was really cool just to look at some of the pictures that had been posted from that neighborhood. It's definitely a little rough around the edges.
Yeah.
Um, but I'm proud of it.
That's nice. That's nice that social media has allowed you to reconnect with some of those people
Yeah,
in that area.
yeah, it
Uh,
is. A lot of people in Iceland are on Facebook, so they use messengers a lot, like some people use WhatsApp. And so I can't leave Facebook because, you get out of
right.
touch with a lot of people.
Yeah,
Yeah.
for sure. For sure. When you were going from school to school, did you find that to be something that was intriguing and interesting for you? Or was it a little bit difficult because you were having to shift into a new environment and figure out how to fit in?
Yeah, when it was my choice, I was sort of aware of it because then I was older, but I remember going to a new school in the middle of the year when I was 7, so like second grade.
Yeah.
I thought that was kind of tough at first and but it was I was really lucky. I made friends right away and I was sort of put in a sort of like a popular girl spot, but I didn't want that. I didn't like want to be popular for some reason. I didn't want any of that. And then but I had a lot of kids, asking me to hang out and somebody said, "No, I'm hanging out with her today." And then I was like, "Oh my God, should I have a calendar?" You know, like thinking this at 7 years old.
Right, right.
But that was wild, yeah. But then we sort of became a group, few of us. And what was really cool in Iceland is that you could go skiing after school. There was a bus that took you to the mountain like at 4 o'clock. So
Okay.
so during that season, I would just like run home, try to get as much homework or, pretend at least my mom would let me go on the bus to go skiing. And that was life for me. It was very physical. I skied with boys mostly. They were a
Okay.
little, kind of wilder, more aggressive in that. And I just learned by following them and we were jumping off like little garages under the snow. And that was incredible. That was like some of my favorite sort of aspect of growing up in Iceland was the skiing.
And so that activity allowed you to um, engage a little bit more, energize you a little bit more in
Yeah.
life.
Yeah. And I understand why they wanted me to be more engaged in sports because I was athletic, but I was just very also into storytelling and arts and
Right, right.
yeah.
Was there any other teachers other than that one in middle school that encouraged you and saw your creativity at that point?
Not really.
Okay.
I don't remember. Yeah, there were some scary teachers. Uh but there was one a little bit later who made me feel really smart and that was nice because I liked all that, I was kind of complicated, I guess, because I was athletic, but I also liked beauty, always creating my own world and that. So
Yeah.
as you go into your teenage years, you're not considered smart in that era because you like beauty and nice things.
Right.
So, but when I had a teacher and yeah, like equivalent to high school, who really believed in my brain and liked how my brain functioned, that was very meaningful to me because it was hard to having to prove yourself. Like, no, I am also smart, but I
Right.
like these things. I like to do this, and I'm also smart. And so that took me, I think, many, many years to understand that I was actually smart because, yeah, I didn't get that encouragement.
Right. Right. Because of the structural regiment of it.
Yeah,
It was
yeah. How I showed up and,
right.
you know, always like very opinionated of how what I would wear. And, I had a whole world in that in my head, where I was, but I think I was always just creating my own world from the beginning and people didn't always understand it. And now that's okay. I don't need the validation anymore. But I used to sort of be a little maybe hurt by it or didn't understand,
Yeah.
when you're more insecure, when you're younger and you feel like you need the validation. So it's
Sure.
almost like a fight inside of your own head. It's like, no, but I am this way. You've been to some, did you go through something like that?
Yeah. Quite a few times. I remember being in second grade, and also was creating little booklets, um,
Yeah.
writing little stories and creating booklets. I guess I got that idea to create them that way from comic books. I
Oh, that
think
makes
that
sense.
I think probably the structure of the comic book kind of allowed me to realize, okay, what they're asking me to do with just one piece of paper is not enough. Like I've got
Yeah.
to have a few more papers, and then I'll fold them together. Um,
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
yeah, I had a little bit of that as well. Um,
Totally.
with your siblings around you, um, were they seeing you as um, kind of the one who was guiding and leading with your creativity, and was that enhancing their world as well?
That's a good question. I don't know. I remember when I was younger and my younger sister, she was like, "Oh, you can do so many different things." Like she was kind of getting that. And she was very intelligent, but she's like really kind of observing my little world in my room and it's like, "You can do anything." I
Yeah.
remember that. My older sister, she's no longer with us. She passed a couple of years ago.
Mm,
We were like very tight because we came from the same cloth. Like my both had the same biological dad. And then at the same time, also very, very different people. But we
okay.
just had a bond that wasn't always, we didn't always hang out, but we would sometimes do something. Like we would go on a trip, to Scotland and just, shop or whatever. Um, and we would sometimes, do these kind of things together. I don't know. Yeah, I mean, I think she liked my creativity and I think, um, but we were just and we're so different in how we showed up in the world and how we sort of, how we spoke. She was more shy. I remember when we were little, I would sort of, because my mom would tell us, like, you always introduce yourself. You walk into the room, and she was a little more shy. So I would just, like, take one for the pack and introduce us,
Right.
you know.
Nice.
Yeah. But both of my younger siblings they are writing now. They're writers of some sort. Yeah. So there is a lot of, there aren't a lot of, business people or lawyers or um, doctors for that matter in our family. Very sort of a creative or academia, teaching, that sort of a thing.
Right.
And
Okay.
yeah, but I think about my grandfather more of late, like because he was like that entrepreneur and I wish I would have been able to learn more from him.
Yeah. Yeah. I can
Yeah.
imagine. Um, when you got to your older years of high school age, um, did the skiing and stuff like that continue in that era as well? And did you start to think more about creative things versus athletic type things?
Yeah, that the skiing did continue for a while, and I don't do it as much anymore. My family is not so much into skiing, but when I get the chance, I do. It did continue, but then I went into, I was, starting to take classes, some kind of acting and dancing classes, and I
Okay.
really wanted to go to school in the States. I'd seen the films. I was working at a cinema and it was only one like cinema room. So
Okay.
I could watch the movies over and over and over. I didn't have to do anything unless I had like homework or whatever.
Right.
And so then I started to see all these films like, Pretty in Pink and, St. Elmo's Fire and
Okay.
all these films. I was like, what is that? Oh
Yeah.
my God. And all these kids have like, they have a car, they have like their rooms, they have TV and telephone in their rooms. Like, what is that? Like, I want that. I want to be, that's what I want. This is
Right.
more my speed, it's a little more lively and expressive. And Icelanders were so shy. And like I said earlier, it's a little more austere. Um, but that was definitely coming into, so I figured out how can I get there? I tried to figure out how can I get there? How can I go to a school in the States? And my mom was like, there's an acting school here. They're free pretty much. Otherwise, you have to figure it out on your own. So there was no like paying tuition, international tuition for any of us. We just had to figure it out. So it took me a while. Meanwhile, well, I came to New York when I was 18.
Okay.
I was au pair I was going to do a year. I lasted like half a year. Uh, some of the some of the rules changed. I was, the agreement I could sort of like take care of the kids and half day and then go to take some classes the other half day. Then that started to change. Then I remember I was really good at making a salad and I made that before dinner and then they wanted me to make the damn salad every time. So it started to be more and more asked of me.
Yeah.
And I was also very young, so maybe I don't know. I don't remember how I communicated or whatnot, but I remember I was like, okay, I'm not doing this anymore. So I left, and I only lasted for a couple of months, sort of on my own until I had to go back home because I ran out of money.
Right.
Um, but during that time, I was really like trying to figure out how I could figure this out. And what came to me was I was going to teach aerobics.
Okay.
So I was like, I can start to do that, and then maybe I can do that alongside school or whatever. I don't know. I
Yeah.
thought that was one of my tickets out, and I did that, but then I loved it, and it became my job. And I sort of was put school on hold for a little while, and yeah, then I competed in aerobic championship in Iceland, and I won. And so I went to the World Cup in Japan. This is like
Oh, wow.
93. Yeah.
Okay.
Um, so that was really cool. And at the same time, I was though auditioning to that theater school there. So I felt like I didn't always get that sort of a mentoring, or there was nobody who was like sort of I don't know, maybe you didn't either, but sort of guiding you a little bit. I feel
Right.
like, there were set values or rules, but there was no guidance in that way. So I'm trying to figure everything out. Like, okay, I'm gonna audition here and I'm gonna, go to Japan. And so I didn't do my best in either or
Hmm.
neither, but I did pretty good in both. But I also was like, that's okay. I'm gonna wait. I'm gonna just, save my money because I was making nice money from the aerobics that I could just pay for my school.
Right.
Um, Anyway, so at least I was able to go. I think I was 24 at the time. So I was a little
Okay.
bit later when I went to university.
Gotcha.
Yeah. But throughout the more teenage years, yeah, there was always some kind of a dance and acting, and then that went into teaching dance and then into the aerobics, which was, ended up being a really cool thing.
Right. So what I'm saying so far is that you're throughout all of the regimented things that you're experiencing in just regular life, you're constantly creating opportunity for yourself. or at least looking to create the opportunity. You're always
Yeah,
scanning to see what is the possibility here, what is the possibility here. That's
absolutely.
that's very
Yeah,
fascinating. And I think many creatives do have that ability to not necessarily have to learn a particular thing to get into it. You just kind of see the opportunity and you step into it and then kind of
yeah.
figure it out along the way.
There's a lot of that. Yeah. I know. That's why that's how I started to create my framework to started with create helping artists and then, it can continue to evolve so into like also teams and individuals who aren't artists, but I mostly work with creatives and artists because it sort of guides you and these questions that you're asking, like where you came from and in sort of figuring out what my knowledge is and so on. This is what I sit down with them and we figure out your story, where you
Yeah,
came from and where do you want to go. And we built up everything like the blueprint guides you in the in between. So I'm saying that because I wish I had something like that.
sure.
But at the same time, I'm very grateful for having taken those detours. I
Yeah,
think if we don't have them, we don't grow as maybe we're meant to.
right.
But it was driving me a little bit crazy. It's like, how come it always makes sense by looking back to connect the dots? How can I figure out a way to connect the dots going forward? And so
Yeah,
that's essentially what I ended up creating. But yeah, there are a lot of artists out there and creatives and they have so many more opportunities than they even see.
yeah,
There is just like there should be guidance and mentoring for everybody. It
yeah,
should be like available in schools or I don't know. Just it's just not as available for the creatives and the artists, I think.
yeah, for sure. At some point, especially here in the States, the arts started getting pulled from the schools due to budget cuts and all that type of stuff and funding and different things. And I think that is um, it, it's disappointing from my perspective because I think those are uh, the fields and areas which allow an individual to explore, expand, um, kind of
Yeah,
figure out who they are, um,
absolutely.
those types of
Yeah.
things.
Did
Uh,
you get that? Did you get guidance along the way?
I did not, well, I won't say I did not. I did in third grade. I was offered an opportunity going into fourth grade to go into a program called Project Plus. And it was a creative program where we would spend half of the day at elementary school, and then the second half of the day we would be able to go over to the high school, and because they had
Mm.
more, rooms and opportunities, we could swim in the pool or play in the gymnasium or do some artistic things. So there was some insight into that from what teachers and stuff were starting to see within me. Um,
Mm.
but my parents pulled me out of public school at that point and put me into a private Christian school.
Okay.
And going into that, there wasn't any kind of real artistic opportunities.
Mm.
So I was having to do that creating on my own as well. Um,
Yeah. Wow,
so
that must have been so different going to a Christian school.
yeah, it was very different. Frustrating at first because it was like, oh man, I'm leaving all my friends that I've made, and I was always introverted, so it was hard for me to try and engage with other people as well. So
Mm.
the friends group that I had made, it was like, oh, now I've got to leave them and go and try to make
Oh,
new friends. So it was a little bit difficult, but it got me to where I am today. So it's just part of the storyline.
it is part of the storyline. Yeah, I know. It's really so muggy in here. I don't want to have the AC on because of our show. Um, I mean, it is when we are able to just sort of unpack that what our story is and see the strength and the sort of detour that we go through is it's just so rich. And when we also are able to remove any kind of shame, because a lot of people have a lot of shame about their background, where they came from, where they were born, or the family, or
Yeah,
so it's just a beautiful thing when we're able to just look at our lives with a new found curiosity
yeah,
and just see what was actually going on and that, because most parents are really doing their best, what they can do,
for sure.
but not, we don't always see that.
Right, exactly.
And I think after a certain age, I don't know, call it 25, I don't think you shouldn't be blaming things on your parents. I think you
Yeah,
can let them be. They did their best.
yeah. Sometimes individuals hold on to that a little bit too long, I think.
Yeah, I know. I mean, it can be tough. It's depend how what the story was.
Yeah,
I certainly had to go through a lot with rejection because my biological dad was sort of chose
yeah,
when he was in touch and didn't always show up when he said and didn't always, um was often breaking promises and things like that. So that's definitely a rejection that I went through. That was a tough one. And then straight into the acting to get more of it because I didn't have
for,
enough.
for
But
sure.
but the thing about that though, the it's an interesting topic to figure out, like to talk about rejection in the arts and I think acting is one of the few that we call it rejection. But the rest of jobs is just like I just didn't get the job. But I
Hmm.
think because we show up, we don't have an instrument. We're there just like in person. You're just auditioning your person.
Yeah,
And so it feels so personal, even if it isn't. But it does feel very personal. So after a while, sort of a start to wear on you.
for sure. And the other thing too is, in acting, you're having to take on another person's identity, so to speak, in whatever
Right.
role that is. So you have to create this emotional experience based on this character that you're going to express yourself as this individual
Yeah.
and whatever opportunity is. And when you get rejected from doing that, it's almost like a double whammy. You get hit
True.
with the fact that, oh man, I just got rejected for the character that I was trying to. And then on top of that, me personally is
Yeah.
being
Yeah,
rejected.
that's true. I hadn't even thought of it like that,
Yeah,
but it's true. Yeah.
there's so many layers within different fields to where that rejection can feel amplified um,
Yeah.
and compound itself. Too, there's so many um, individuals who try to get into acting and just struggle and struggle for years. Um, and I think part of it has to do with some of that, um, those rejections.
Yeah.
Some of it has to do with the cultural of who has control and say so
Right.
within those environments. So it's definitely a field that's a challenging creative
Yeah. Yeah,
opportunity.
it is. And the directors and the producer, they got the power. And but at the same time, looking at it back, if I were to go back into, I'm not going to, but if I were to go back into acting, I believe that I have more power than I realized at the time because of my consciousness. I've elevated my consciousness in a way that I don't give my power over. So I
Right.
was I would be able to sit in it more and I've expanded and with the growth that I have today, it would have been different experience.
Yeah.
But we are young when we start and that's okay. It's part of it. I started also sort of to take my own power in that way. I started to write my own material Because I
Okay.
also got roles that I didn't want to. So I also where started to like say no, like this is not for me.
Right.
If I thought it was stupid or something, I didn't want to do it,
Yeah.
Um, and I also when I was in Seattle after graduating from University of Washington, I was considered to be very intense. They, because they're softer spoken or like I had an accent and
Okay.
so they just wanted me to be like playing a killer or Russian prostitute and that
Uh,
sort of a thing in those indie films and theater that came my way. And I was like, but I like comedy too. Like, I want to, you know, write something funny.
yeah.
So I did write a solo show. That wasn't actually that funny, but I wrote some comedies later. But I did write a solo show. That was a nice sort of expansion of growth as well. I wrote that and then I moved to Iceland for a couple of years and we set it up there. I had found a director and then we really wanted to take it to New York and I was able to raise the money. I had certainty about that. I had certainty that this was going to happen. That's what I'm kind of getting into, like earlier when we were talking about the rejection. I
Yeah.
didn't allow rejection there. So I had that certainty. And I remember we got some press for the show. It was a solo show that I wrote and acted in, and it was about this woman who was possessed by August Strindberg. So it was a
Okay.
little wild, and there was live music with it. And I think it was definitely very original, a little bit avant-garde, and also just cool and sort of ahead of his time.
Yeah.
And then we're getting some press, and I was on live TV, and they were asking, "So what's next for your show?" And I said, "Oh, we're going to New York." They're like, "Oh, wow, what theater?" I was like, "Well, stay tuned." I had like $30 in my account. So I was able to, and then I was a single mom at the time between my
Okay.
two marriages. And I lived in a neighborhood. I was able to buy a little apartment in this neighborhood that's really beautiful and all these consulates and wealthier people. And there was one time I was just in sort of a drive-in store right by, and there was a guy behind me. I was like, oh, that guy. He was a big investor, like a mogul there. I was like, he's going to pay for my show. He's going to invest. And so I just called his office and asked for an appointment, and I got the appointment, but he canceled numerous times. And then I talked to a friend of mine who is a lawyer, lived in that neighborhood as well. I had taught him aerobics back in the day, or like,
Okay.
years earlier. And I said, hey, I keep trying to get an appointment with the mogul business guy, and he keeps canceling. Do you know him? Could you like ask him to meet me? He's like, I'll check in. And so next appointment that I had scheduled was probably the fifth or sixth. He actually showed up. And I
Okay.
just came in like almost in a not a business suit, but fierce with a laptop to show him all the visuals. Like he didn't have a chance not to invest. Of course, he was going to think about it,
Yeah.
but then he did. He paid for the whole thing.
That's amazing.
That was
That's amazing.
amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that was incredible experience to get to come here, Theater Row, and we also got all the press here. What wasn't working was the producer was not very experienced, so we weren't, and this was before social media also. So
Yeah.
we were doing a downtown show in Broadway district. It was off Broadway, it was in theater. So we were sort of didn't have that going for us, but it was still an amazing experience. We ran it for 6 weeks. It was 8 shows a week, and it's very physical and throwing myself on the floor, and
Right.
it was good times.
Let's back up just a little bit and talk
Yeah.
about school in Seattle.
Yeah.
How was that? How was that for you mentally in terms of that transition from Iceland to the U.S. And then being in that environment where there's a ton of people all around
Yeah.
you?
I appreciate that question. I think it was amazing. I think I was so ready to because before that I had been, teaching aerobics. I had become a very young mom. I was always sort of looking, like you said earlier, for my next or creating opportunity. There, I
Yeah.
got to be in school and, just to sit and lean in and learn.
Yeah.
And I was so excited about it. And I did really, really well. I had to start at a community college. I was both the cost and then also
Yeah.
I hadn't finished what's sort of well, I had finished what was equivalent to high school here,
Okay.
but the school in Iceland is 2 years longer. So it's like the years were off. And so I had to prove myself. But I was able to take like placement tests at this Shoreline
Okay.
Community College.
Yeah.
Um, and I studied my ass off and I, just worked really hard. I got into that. And I was so lucky. There was this woman, Chris Fisher, who was incredible mentor. She was my acting teacher. She was my director. She was just like the best person that I had met up to this day that actually saw me.
Yeah.
So that was incredible. And and then my goal is to transfer to University of Washington. And then I start to like talk to the advisors over there to make sure everything's matching because I couldn't have like a financial error in this, like, you
Yeah.
know. So I was going down there and just being excited about getting into that school. And so I just worked really hard. I had some friends, but I didn't have a lot of social life because I'm studying. I'm, taking care of my daughter.
Yeah.
Her dad, my ex-husband, he was an engineer and worked a lot.
Okay.
So I didn't, but I would often be at rehearsals all night. It kind of went like this. I would get up like, I don't know, 6-ish. I would take care of my daughter, take her to school. I would go to school. And then I would pick her up, go home, take care of dinner, go to rehearsal, come home at 11 and study till 3 in the morning. And then, so I slept like 4 hours very often, but I was
Oh,
still in my 20s, so I was able to hang. I
yeah.
couldn't do that today.
Right. A
No.
little bit difference in energy levels at that point in time.
Yes, yeah. But I was just so curious. I was very just like I thought I was proud of myself and but I was brave.
Yeah.
I didn't maybe realize that at the time, but I never gave myself credit like that. But now I am just giving her credit afterwards that she was very brave to do all that.
For sure. Oh my word. That takes such bravery. Was your husband at that time, was he American or was he Icelandic as well?
Icelandic, yeah. My husband today is American, but yeah,
Okay, gotcha.
he was Icelandic. So we went there as a little family to go to school from Iceland to Seattle. And my aunt, my biological dad's sister lived there, and she was so lovely. She was really just a good support system for us too.
Oh yeah.
So my aunts and uncle were there. Yeah, that was great to have them. We could occasionally, like my daughter would sometimes go and spend the night, so we could get a little just,
Free time.
breathe,
Yeah.
yeah, free time, breathing time, be like young people, go
Yeah.
out, stuff like that. Yeah.
That's amazing. Having that opportunity of having a relative here as well for you. I
Yeah.
think that's huge because it it allows you to have somebody who kind of understands the culture already a little bit. So
Yeah.
it's hopeful to navigate with that support and system in place.
Right. Yeah. That's just invaluable. Yeah. To have family around that, wants you to do well and supports you. Yeah.
Right. And was theater your main focus when you were at school there?
Yeah. It was the all 4 years was, yeah,
Okay.
major in drama. And then I had to take a lot of science classes. And it was kind of cool that I did that at the smaller school, the
Yeah.
community college, because the
Yeah.
classes were smaller and it was not my strength. But I remember I registered for the wrong science class. It was actually like anatomy for people who wanted to go into medical field, and we're dissecting a cat. And I
Oh,
was
wow.
like, an actual cat. And I was like, okay, well, okay, here we go. I'm just, they were just making fun of me in a good way because they always they all wanted to go into medical field. And I was like, well, at least I can, audition for some kind of a medical show,
Right.
ER or Brace Anatomy, whatever it's called.
Yeah.
And so that was kind of, and I remember the teacher said, okay, so this is what we're going to do. I'm going to give you a pass because you showed up every class. You tried everything. It's not your strength, but you will pass. You spent the whole quarter year.
Nice.
So
That
that was, yeah.
that's fascinating to have a teacher, especially in a different country.
Hmm.
Again, having a different perspective on the regimented versus what's going on in the U.S. And then
Yeah.
having a teacher recognize the fact that I know it's not her strong suit, but she showed up.
Yeah.
And that was the thing that allowed you to move forward. That's fascinating.
Exactly. Yeah, that was I had some great teachers at that school. English teacher too. He was always encouraging me to submit some of my essays. I didn't end up doing that. I don't think I just gave myself time, but I that was really good advice.
Yeah.
And I was very curious about also because I was very curious even about the history because we hadn't learned much either about the states in history in Iceland. So I took what was at the time called Native American history, African American history. I was very,
Okay.
very curious about what went down and from the people that actually like the teacher was a native, he was first American. So I learned from him and same, African American person teaching Black history. That was very important to me to learn these. It was all by, you could choose from very many different classes. So that was really
Yeah.
important to me. And I felt like was starting to speak in a different way and just be more aware. And I started to volunteer for kids, Latin children that didn't have they were just underserving or didn't have a lot of budget for camps or whatnot. So I went in there. I had a friend who was from Mexico. I learned a lot from her too. So it was really a rich time in Seattle, just learning about the culture of,
Right.
all the different people that, have come here and live here and.
Yeah, for sure. Again, that's an amazing experience to have an opportunity like that. Um, because I think that's where a lot of confusion takes place in the world today is a lack of understanding of other cultures, and
Absolutely.
that begets the the stereotypes. It begets the biases towards other cultures. It's just a lack of understanding. I think if we're open to the opportunity to be interested rather
Yeah,
rather than judgmental, uh,
absolutely.
it might
Yeah.
open things up quite a bit.
Yeah, curiosity is really an incredible thing because once you're curious about something, you will start to understand it better and not just put your hand out and say no to a group of people, like different communities that you might know nothing about.
Right, right, exactly.
Yeah. Yeah, I remember my acting teacher, that woman I was talking about, Chris Fisher, she would even talk about biases. She would ask like, "What is your bias?" And we would have a conversation about it. She's like, "We all have it. What's yours?"
Yeah,
I can't remember what I said at the time, but it was funny. Some of the answers were funny because one person said, "Oh, that lady that chews loud gum and has bangles." I was like, "Yeah, that's annoying."
for
You know.
sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, the at what age do you end up going back to Iceland and start this idea and creating of this idea to come back?
Yeah, so I am when we moved back, the reason also we moved back, my ex and my daughter, three of us moved back, was I had only given 1 year of working permit. And
Oh,
I was like, I can't just sit here for years and you know.
right.
So we just decided to go back to Iceland then. And then I'm like just like 30 or early 30s,
Okay.
32 maybe.
So it was a little. There was a little bit of time after the college that you were able to
Yeah.
be here, and that before you went all back.
Yeah, I was able to work for a year and I did book some, I got a just ensemble part in one of the equity theaters there and some indie stuff. So it was like I was always doing something. And
Right.
then I just went back to square one and taught some aerobic classes as well. Uh and then yeah, so we go to Iceland and so year in he and I go separate ways. Like I had sort of always known maybe we're not meant to be together forever.
Okay.
He's a great guy, nothing wrong. It was just sort of my always creating my destiny,
Yeah.
uh, having that strong feeling that I had a soulmate and it wasn't him.
Sure. Sure. Did did you see that as uh, an opportunity for yourself, or was there a little bit of that carryover of the rejection component that played into that mindset at that time?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think I just knew that we were not like I wanted something a little bit different and more. I wanted somebody I would what was really important to me was I wanted to be with somebody I could grow with, like
Yeah.
together and
Sure.
grow spiritually, intellectually, share humor and learn from. And I felt like that those elements weren't all there, you know.
Yeah.
So I figured we're still young and it's better to break it up now than later. At the same time, I was a little bit annoyed with myself why I couldn't just be like a normal human being and like think like he's a good guy. We have a child together. Now we're buying a house in Iceland. We're gonna remodel this. This could be my dream. But I couldn't stick. I was like yeah, so I was annoyed with myself that I
Okay.
couldn't just yeah, stay the
Did you
course.
right? Did you feel though that some of that annoyance was that internal creative that was trying to kind of flourish up to the top and explode out
That
versus a structural thing?
probably a little bit of that as well. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I could see that.
Okay.
Uh but there was this I just had this strong conviction that I wanted to be with my soulmate and
Yeah.
I hadn't found him yet. And like and I knew. So I didn't rush into it. We had tried to separate when we were still in Seattle. And then I
Okay.
was like, no, that's a mistake. Like I wanna, but then, with the children, like you want your kids to grow up with both parents because I'm a child of divorce and that wasn't easy. But
Yeah.
I also didn't want to be a role model as a woman who would not, go after my own dreams. I wanted to also speak to my own dreams and desires and reflect that, and my daughter would learn from that as well, you
Yeah.
know, even if it was challenging.
Sure.
But yeah, so we're there for three years total, but year in, yeah, he and I separated, and then I'm still just producing shows. I'd open up a little business, was kind of teaching children acting and yoga. I'd taken a yoga certificate when I was there,
Okay.
and sort of yeah, like a little hub. And then I was working on the solo show to try to get that to the States.
Yeah.
And then there was a little quiet time, and my director and I were meeting up with another actress to see if three of us could work together. And I remembered a play for two women that could be really good for us, not costly, just three people or two people and one director. And I said, yeah, this professor at University of Washington lent me this play once and they were like email him and then they sort of why don't you email him. I was like yeah sure, and he was this coolest guy in the world, and so I email him and he doesn't answer me for a couple of months, and then he does, and we start sort of a chatting back and forth, so I told him I was no longer married. I shared that voluntarily
Yeah.
because then I started to think back. He was like the coolest person that I had ever met. And he was a
Okay.
very young professor. I was an older student. There was no gray area. Nothing was weird then. But what
Sure.
started to happen in these email communications was like an obvious attraction.
Okay.
So, yeah. And he is in Seattle and he's like buying a condo at the time. And he said, yeah, so I'm not kind of spending money, but I'd love to go to Iceland. And And then I go out one night. I go to a friend is doing a solo show, and there were some guys from New York there, and that's before the tourism started in Iceland. So I'm asking like, what are you guys doing here? Like from New York, like, and they were like, oh yeah, cheaptickets.com forgot to put the price in, or Icelandair forgot. So we just came here. We just paid the tax for $60.
Oh, wow.
So I was like, hold that thought. And I just ran home, I see it in the whole movie, like, I ran across alongside the pond into my home,
Yeah.
called him, and I said, hey, go on cheaptickets.com. See if you can find some dates that you pay only $60. And he tried a couple of things. He's like, yeah, I'm coming in 2 weeks. So he
Oh, wow.
came on a long weekend. That was our first date. He flew 7,000 miles to
Wow.
come on a first date in Iceland. And we just clicked immediately. It was just like the universe had been helping us to get together, obviously.
For sure. I was about to say that does sound like a universal wink there. Uh,
Yeah, yeah,
and that says a lot too about his interest of being willing to travel that far, right?
yeah,
Uh,
yeah.
that's amazing.
So
Um,
there, that's how I met my soulmate. I had somebody I already knew, just differently.
yeah, fascinating, fascinating. And then from there, how did that move forward in terms of him being in Seattle,
Yeah.
you being in Iceland? How did the combining of individuals start to form?
Right, right. Yeah. So we did a year, long distant year. Well, soon after he comes on the first date, I'm going to New York with my show. So I
Okay,
was I was here for a couple of months and he was in and out. He stayed a lot, spent a lot of time here. He was directing in Carolina or somewhere nearby
okay,
and or short flight away.
yeah,
And so we spent a lot of time together. And my daughter came out. She was just 9 or 10 at the time. And so they get to hang out. So I'm just trying out like the whole thing. And they really bonded. That was important to me. I mean, mostly
nice,
important.
sure,
Uh, and and then at the end of the summer, I go back to Iceland and that's where he and I just do long distance. Like he would come for Christmas and I would go for like, I don't know, spring break or something like that. And
yeah,
then one of those times I was there in May and then he asked me to marry him and I was like, yes. And he said, how about Friday? So he wanted to start to like, we wanted to get married, but he wanted to start to work on the papers too.
okay,
And then we had a whole another wedding we just didn't tell anyone. We just told people we were engaged, but we were actually
gotcha,
married. And then we got married in the November. But so that fall, my daughter and I moved to Seattle. Yeah, I got permission from her dad and we moved and we stayed there for 6 years or
okay,
so. Yeah, and then we moved to New York. We always wanted to be in New York. That was always our goal. When we were
right,
here that summer, it was like this is where we belong together. Like and he was sort of a like done with Seattle in that way. Like
sure,
um he was seeking, more opportunities and so on. And so yeah, then that whole thing happened. And my daughter was really cool with moving. She was really thriving as a child. And then we go into her teenage years and she gave us hell for only about 10 years, but she's doing great now.
oh man, I could imagine, I can imagine.
We had to pay for her. Yeah.
I was about to ask how that played out for her. Because again, I'm thinking back. All right, I know how we started off the conversation of how that was for you as a younger girl, experiencing that separation with your biological father, um,
Yeah.
and how that played on your mindset. And then now she's kind of in this similar situation, and earlier on, she's a little bit more compatible and willing to be connected, but then the teenage years starts to erupt,
Oh
which
yeah,
I think
all
is
the way.
natural. I think most teenagers are diving into that type of a scenario.
Yeah, most of them. Yeah, she went into serious teenage into like moving here, she's like a party girl. I mean, she's hanging out with people that are older, very artsy people, small, like private artsy clubs, just way too young.
Yeah.
Um, and, so she partied. There was like drug use and the bad boyfriends and the alcohol, like the whole thing was a lot. It was
Yeah.
so much. And then, she was ready to be done with that.
Right. Right.
And it's like
For sure.
thriving today. But man, that's tough for a parent, when you don't know if your kid is alive or, where they are. There's so much energy that goes into looking for them, chasing, Googling what does this pill is, that you find on the floor. Like the whole thing, it becomes so tedious. You're sort of a becoming um detective in a way. Like you're always like on duty.
Yeah.
And then the drug use got very heavy too when it's a heavy drugs, like smoking heroin.
Oh, wow.
Yeah,
Okay.
so that was a lot. And I don't understand how we're like my husband and I survived this thing because he never questioning, not being with us.
Right.
Shows who he is and how we're meant to be together. But that was really, really extremely hard, the hardest time I've had in my life. And and then she finally went to rehab because you can't ask, I mean, you try to get people there, and we had certainly done that, taken her and put her to rehab in a way,
Sure.
bribed her in some way. But then it has to be when she was in those heavy drugs, then it had to be her to say
Yeah.
like, okay, I'm gonna go. And her being my daughter, she didn't want to go to some any she wanted to go to a beautiful place. So she wanted to go to California for rehab with like a pool and palm trees and all that.
Oh, my word. Oh,
And she did. And, she didn't go back to heroin again, but the drug use wasn't and partying wasn't fully over until it was,
yeah.
when
Yeah.
she was fully ready. And now she has a thriving career and travels a lot and goes to the gym more than I do. And
Fantastic.
yeah.
Fantastic. So, when you got to New York and you had the opportunity to go ahead and put your show on, how does that go from the beginning? Was it something that took a while to get moving? Once it was moving, was it successful, or did you see, okay, it struggled a little bit? What was the dynamic of putting that show on?
Yeah, that's so we didn't sell as much as we wanted to.
Okay.
We got great press. We paid for PR. We had a really cool PR. And so, all the theater magazines and newspapers, New York Times, all of them wrote about us. And, Time Out, like we got really impressive press, but we just didn't sell. And I think because of the dynamic like that I mentioned earlier, that we were sort of like a downtown show in Midtown in the theater district. The tourists that were on Times Square buying tickets at the ticket booth, like outside, they were not necessarily going to see something called Plums in New York by Icelandic, weird last name, before I was Parker. Yeah. Uh, but where the downtown crowd would have. It was also we're still in August when we open,
Okay.
and the New Yorkers are just not always here during that time.
Right.
So that was a bit of something we would have, liked to do differently. But the experience was there. Always had a show, even if it was like small house.
Okay.
Um, so we were working our butts off, and it felt like such a great accomplishment to having done it.
Yeah.
But I always wonder what it would have been differently with a different producer, and there was like some simple mistakes that were like we weren't in the what they call the ABC column in New York Times, just like those little boxes that list all the shows That was a
Yeah.
massive, mistake while, they were buying, like the producer was buying a big ad in Time Out. It's just like, so there was
Right.
just a lack of experience there.
Sure.
And, but, the people that I brought with me from Iceland, like they, I, I'm happy that I gave them, opportunity that they might have not gotten otherwise.
Yeah.
And there was a guy who came to, he had read about us in New York Times and he came to see the show and he was sort of an indie filmmaker and he wanted to adopt the script into a film.
Okay.
And he, he only had so much budget, but I still said yes to it because it was sort of the only film opportunity with the show at the time to try to make it have more longevity with the
Yeah.
story. And so he optioned the script, and I came here to, yeah, he was in Ithaca. We rehearsed there, and then we shot in the city. So that's the following summer, the summer before I moved back to the States, like to Seattle. So I
Okay.
came here for that as well. Yeah. And then I had a little bit of an injury. My co-actor, he dropped me on a like a concrete floor. We were rehearsing like a physical
Oh,
scene and I got some kind of it was just my neck was like stuck. I couldn't like really move. And it wasn't serious, but I just was out of alignment and really couldn't move. It's just painful.
yeah.
So we lost a few days and it was already tight schedule. That co-actor had another project. So what ended up happening is like the film never got done. It never got finished.
Oh,
He was
wow.
always going to do like a version or a short film out of it. He never did. So that's I was like, yeah, that's yet another film I did that ended up in a drawer, because I'd
Right.
done a few of those. The
Yeah.
stoner, like who's always going to take his film to festivals, like did a few of those in Seattle. Like, yeah, it just happens. It's just a part of it. It's like,
Yeah. That
uh,
culture, the theater culture, has
yeah,
has a tendency of big ideas and a lot of times unfinished
unfinished. Yeah,
business,
absolutely. Yeah. Oh, yeah.
unfinished business. Um,
100%. But yeah, so that was that. And it I think I'm really grateful to having done that. And I'm proud of it. I'm proud of the drive and I think about whenever I'm sort of anxious or I find fear or I don't believe in something I'm doing, I keep thinking about go back to that time because I had such certainty
yeah.
about I'm going to do the show. There is no maybe or what, or maybe it works out. It's just like we're doing this. So that's
Yeah.
what I did. I drove that through as far as I could. And
Yeah.
that's a great accomplishment to have with you in your like confidence box.
Oh, for sure. That's huge. And I see that, that you had that early on, even with your creativity, just knowing that you could create your own worlds as a little girl, right?
Yeah.
You had that confidence then, and then just moving that forward to, you know, that present day of um, knowing, yeah, we're just going to go ahead and do this because you're confident enough to do it. I think that's a huge uh, example for other creatives as well of being able to trust themselves enough to be curious, stick with it,
Yeah.
step into something. Um,
Yeah. Absolutely. And that sort of a confidence or certainty doesn't come overnight. Even
no,
if you just write it out, you write yourself a little script and just read it every night, like it will get in there.
yeah,
That's one of those tools that you can always do. Just write out what you want, read it out loud, morning and night, just over and over and over. And until your sort of a consciousness starts to believe it. And
yeah,
then the energy around you shifts. And then you are all of a sudden attracting new people and new opportunities because you've really sold yourself that idea that this is going to come into reality. You're going to make this happen, you
right.
know.
At what point in your acting and theater career, did you decide, I think I want to move into some other thing? And what was the thought process there?
Yeah, that was so when I moved to Seattle, to be with, my second marriage, we I was like I wanted to get a grown-up job. I
Okay.
didn't want to just come and just be auditioning for the three theaters they have there. I wanted to contribute to our lives.
Yeah.
So this is a little bit of a side detour if you want to hear
Sure.
that.
Yeah.
So I get a job at Nordstrom just as a shop girl, and because I've
Okay.
always sort of read and was knowledgeable about high fashion and the designers, and they were artists to me, and I knew a lot about them. I was able to start on the floor in couture department,
Nice.
and yeah, and then a few months in, I'm sort of like, okay, what else can we do here? And then I heard about this open door policy, and meaning I could knock on any doors in corporate. That's where I wanted to, I wanted like a bigger
Oh,
job.
yeah.
So I made a appointment with Blake Nordstrom, he's passed since, but he was yeah, one of the family, the CEO
Right.
of the business. There were three brothers at the time. And so I got an appointment with him, and he sort of had think a little, he enjoyed it that I was just showing up there, this Icelandic girl, like saying like, listen, I love your company. I would love to work here, but I don't have time to be on the floor and sell dresses. I gotta get moving here. So, what can I do? How does this
Yeah.
work?
Right. Right.
And he calls in the director of PR and introduces me to her, and so on. So then I knock on a few more doors, and I go into the art and creative department of, where the graphic designers and the copywriters were, and
Yeah.
eventually I met with one girl because I was meeting everyone for coffee, just like how do you get in? What do you got?
Yeah.
Um, and she said, okay, I'm not going to tell you to quit your job because I was still working in the store. But as of now, they see you as a shop girl. So just take that how you want. It's like, oh, okay, got it. So I quit my job and just, again, with that certainty, I was like, I know I'm going to get into corporate. And lo and behold, a job opened up, like a new job that I hadn't even, that was just created. It was called marketing coordinator. And that was in the designer and the high fashion that I had worked in, but in corporate. So I was the first one to get that job. And I just remember like I purchased a Dolce& and Gabbana suit. I was going to show up power
Yeah.
into that interview. And I
Yeah.
landed the job. I think the suit went a long way. And I had no idea about anything marketing related other
Okay.
than just what I've known from theater.
Right.
So, but I had all the fashion knowledge, and so we just, just start learning, and I'm part of my job is also events, and that's like kind of like theater, and so
Yeah.
it's sort of and I outgrow it really, really fast, and I was getting tired of it, and they wanted to put me on a career path, but they were also like they didn't really know what to do with me sometimes because I was not also not that traditional what they knew of. They
Right.
were like they couldn't always figure me out. There was something, that Icelandic Viking thing, whatever.
Yeah.
And I think also I wasn't fully done with theater. So that's where I kind of come back to your answer with the theater. I felt like it was still pulling me. I hadn't said goodbye to it.
Right.
So what I did during that time, I wrote a comedy and I submitted that to University of Washington, and they optioned that and put up a whole production. It was really cool.
Nice.
And I remember inviting some people from Nordstrom to come and see the show. So it was really kind of fun to like put these two
Yeah.
worlds together. Um, and yeah, eventually I did quit and I started a blog, just sort of a lifestyle blog.
Okay.
And I had a business plan for that. I had saved up some money and ready to go. And this is when my daughter starts to really act out. So it was just a
Uh,
good thing that I wasn't working full time.
right.
I needed to be on duty because shit was going down.
Yeah. Yeah. For sure.
Uh, so I ended up not doing the blog as much as I wanted. I did come here to New York. I went to Fashion Week. I was always figuring out what it was. And eventually we moved to New York. My husband gets a job at NYU.
Okay.
And so she's at the time in like a private art school, and we wanted her to finish there.
Right.
To this is her, she's going into her senior year has already started, or she's going into her senior year.
Okay.
And so her and I are going to stay back in Seattle. She's going to finish her senior year, and we just go back and forth a little bit when we could. And then the school is just saying like, okay, you need to come over and talk to us, her school. And she either needs to go to rehab because she's smoking weed and whatever she's doing every day here at school, whatever, and or just leave. That's
Yeah.
it. And she was like, "Oh, I can just go to the public school up the street." I was like, "No, no, no. It's the rehab or we're moving to New York. Like either we be together as a family or, you know." So
Yeah.
she's like, "Let's go to New York." Said it was not ready to go to rehab. And
Okay.
so we do that. And she goes into school here. Like we got great support here from the, NYU community, and she went to
Yeah.
school here, and that was all great, went well. And this is when I start to like, okay, what am I going to do here? Still had my blog, and I wanted to go and get, start to make some money. And I'm looking at marketing jobs, something, and Nordstrom was still so fresh, so I thought I could get work somewhere. And I knew a bunch of people in the fashion houses. Somehow nothing, it was just like locked doors, like couldn't get in anywhere.
Mm.
And now I'm starting to like, oh my God, I'm gonna start to go back into retail. Like I have to be a shop girl again.
Right.
I don't even get jobs. Like I didn't even get a job at Anthropology on the floor because there it was this thing like you're overqualified or you don't fit into this job.
Yeah.
So that was sort of it's like, okay. Finally, I see something on Craigslist that there is some little boutique perfumery in the West Village is looking for some support. And I
Okay.
just, call them or email them, whatever, and get an interview. And it's one of those little stories, you have to ring the bell. And you walk in and you're like in a little Paris. It's the most gorgeous boutique I'd ever seen in
Nice.
my life. Yeah. And I had sometimes, worked in perfume to like, that person that's handing out the card to,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
I had been that girl before in the past at some
Yeah.
point. Um,
The tester.
the tester, yeah. So I knew a little bit about perfume, and they saw my marketing experience from Nordstrom, so they were very impressed, and liked my whole like wardrobe, whatever. So that was a no-brainer. I started working there, and that was the best thing. That's I think is another sort of a universe, pushing me because these people are my best friends today. Like I don't know what my world would be like without them.
Nice.
And like here, the New York life, because they introduced me to so many this like way of life here, and where they would go to a restaurant, and even when they go to Paris, like how because my husband and I love going to Paris, like how they do Paris and things. There's so many things that just elevated our lives, I feel like,
Yeah. Yeah.
and then I'm just like that's kind of coming to its course. Like okay, now it's I was there for 3 years, and so one of them helped me just kind of or actually a partner of one of them helped me look at my resume and really bring out my writing or my storytelling. And
Okay.
and because that's what I wanted to do. It's like I really just want to write ads or something.
Hmm.
And so and he's like, I think you should do videos. You could write videos or, anyway, he's helping me with my resume, really brings it out. I sent it to one of these creative agencies that sent you to like different jobs for
Yeah.
copywriting and whatever. So I get booked immediately to write for luxury hotels.
Oh wow.
Yeah, and I just write that for years, like several different hotels and all like high-end luxury, freelance between sort of agencies. There's one agency I loved called SWAT in Tribeca, and I worked with them for almost a year. They were just like fabulous and fun to work with.
Yeah.
And after that, I'm rebranding some hotel in Bahamas. I'm working with a small hotel in Iceland, and that's when the pandemic hits.
Oh,
So now we're a few years in. I've been doing this and it's going so great, but then my job evaporated overnight.
Yep.
So that's where we are right now.
And and at that point, when that takes place, first let me highlight something for the audience
Yeah.
because I think this is a key thing that needs to be uh, shown for creatives. Your journey has taken you from being the little girl who's creating her own worlds as a child, being influenced by your mother's magazines that you're seeing around the
Mm,
house, right?
right.
And so as you're progressing forward, you're starting to have this interest in theater and movies and television. And you delve into that, you explore it, you experience it. And then you have this opportunity to move into fashion, which is, it, as soon as you said it, I was like, oh, of course. Why would it not be anything other than that based on all those magazines that were sitting around?
Right. Right.
And I love fashion. So
Yeah. Okay, cool.
hearing
Yeah.
that come out, I was just like, oh, this is cool. But
Yeah.
the the willingness to move and transition from one creative field into another, I think
Mm,
is a huge thing that a lot of creatives get stuck in just one particular field and they're not willing to step into another because they don't think they can do it. But what I'm
mhm.
seeing from your story is you have this mindset of, I'm just going to do it. And you're going to figure it out as you're stepping into it. And you just know instinctively, I would like to do this. I'm going to apply to do this. And then you end up getting the positions.
Right.
I think that's huge for creatives across industries to just not only look at themselves as being put in one particular lane. If that lane starts to end for them, look at what they can potentially do in another industry that might align similarly with that lane that they've been in.
Right.
And I think those are the types of mindset shifts that will allow them to progress further, not get completely destroyed by the fact that what they thought they were going to do ends abruptly or after a period of time. And they think, well, I can't go any further and do anything because this area dried up. But there's
Right.
plenty of other opportunities that they could step into if they're willing to make those pivots.
Yeah, it's that's the key. They're willing to make the pivot that is because and it's understandable that they all don't always want to make that pivot. They want to get through and want to stay in what they chose for themselves. They want to, they don't feel like they're done in a way.
Yeah,
And I think that's a key part before you're sort of gonna leave or pivot. It's a little bit like a divorce. You really have to
sure.
sort of look at the you do a little paperwork and physical work and spiritual work and all that to sort of graduate from that area before you move over.
Yeah,
I say that because I've met a lot of people in my life who were in the theater, and especially actors, that they carry this sort of a bitterness that it didn't work out. And
right.
that's not, and I saw that early on. And I remember it's like, if I'm gonna leave, then I don't want that. I don't want to have this bitterness because that's not the life that I want.
Yeah,
And it gets in the way a lot. And people might not be aware of it, but it's sad too to carry that. It sort of weighs, it brings you down a little bit.
absolutely. Absolutely. Once the pandemic hits and everything just kind of falls out from under you, like it did for most people,
Yeah.
um, how did your creative mind start to kick in for you?
Yeah, that took a minute. I say this, I've said this on other podcasts. I do like feel like I stared at the wall for like 2, 3 months, just like I didn't know what was happening also.
Right.
And we had just come back as a family from a ski trip in Idaho, just like came back like quarter to COVID back to New York. And I remember going to the store just like, oh wow, they still have food here. They have toilet paper. They have everything that, we thought was not going
It's
to be
gonna come up.
available.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, once we sort of buckle up and set up house and figure it out, it's first just like, what is this thing? We knew we were gonna take it very seriously. That was like a given. And my husband was working on Zoom. He was teaching on Zoom, and I was, all my clients was, yeah, it was just a dry, nobody was, there were no work for hotels or anything like that. And
Right.
so, but I started just actually took to podcasts. I started to listen to podcasts, and I found this community, the copywriter club was called. So it was like
Okay.
they had a mastermind for like a 12-month mastermind for people who had been in copywriting, marketing, and you know, and I just joined. And I remember it costed quite a bit for when, especially if you're not working, but I
Yeah.
just took the chance. I believed that if I was going to invest in myself that way, it would come back. Like it cannot not come back.
Right.
So I just, joined the community, and they were really great. They sort of bring out the entrepreneur in you, and they were like, what's going to be your signature product? And, because I'd worked, now I'm just looking at, should I work as a copywriter or brand, consultant, or if I'm going to work like this, how do I do it by myself at home? Now I'm not working with or through agency, or, I haven't been hired by anyone, but this is like, there's just so much to figure out.
Right.
So I started with sort of attracting smaller businesses and creatives and artists. And I was working with like helping photographers to rebrand, so I went into personal branding more. And I
Okay.
was very, very interested in that. And there was one person, this guy in Atlanta, he was a musician and he was also a copywriter. So we like really connected with a sort of a artist mindset.
Yeah.
And we ended up starting our own podcast. It was called Artist Inclusive, and we had it for a couple of years.
Okay.
And we had a community alongside it. And we're just offering people like help because I had seen a lot of actors and theater folks trying to set up plays on Zoom. And I don't know, I just wanted to help them to see if I can help with my digital marketing experience to how they could put themselves out there and personal branding and all that.
Right.
So that's just going on for like a couple of years. The podcast was fun. We interviewed like puppeteers and, you know, poets, and even Helen Hunt. It was
Okay.
from like, yeah, Oscar winning, and like somebody who was just, looking for money for the next meal. It was like all
Yeah.
like, yeah,
Broad range.
yeah, very, very broad range. But then once the pandemic was sort of over, the online community was people were just like they wanted to, so we sort of just folded that unofficially in a way, or we tried to move to Slack. But the mastermind community, that was great, and I learned quite a bit. I also got started to get some clients through that community.
Hmm.
But I kept figuring out like that my signature product, and they were really, you know, encouraging me to do that. And that's how I built that framework, Evoke. It
Okay.
started as a personal brand blueprint. And then I started to see, oh, this can work for so many different people,
Yeah.
you know. And then my husband took interest in it too, and we started to build it for teams, for businesses and organizations, so we can do it together with teams. And now I work with an actress in Iceland. She is working with me, and we train teams also. She teaches like physical sort of an inner clown, where you train yourself, you train your curiosity and how you respond, and listening skills, all kinds of. And then mine is like that blueprint that table work.
Right.
So I've done different packages with people, all coming from, this blueprint that I created that is called Evoke. And it's not just to awaken something in you, it's also acronym for Earth, values, objectives, knowledge, and then essence. And
Mm,
each category speaks to each part of your life, your world.
yeah,
It's really for you to look at where you came from and create your own world, something that I've been doing for a while. And there's a lot of like story mapping in this and storyboard also. Like you take your life into a film, like a three-act script in a way. So that all came out of this. So now I'm sort of in a limbo between, still in sort of a marketing space, but really curious about coaching.
yeah,
And and then I found I was working with a client, was helping her do some rebranding. She's like a thought leader, and she told me I didn't even know about Dr. Joe Dispenza at the time,
okay,
and she told me that she was working with him. She was one of his consultant on business side, and I was like, okay, cool. And she said, there's this thing called Heart Math Institute. Look into that. It's like, oh, okay, cool. And then I just kind of handed it over to my husband because he was looking for a course. He's, faculties like professors, they always want to add on something and it's part of research and whatnots. And I said, this would be really cool for you. So he does it. And I was just going to sort of learn curiously through him. But I was curious enough that I signed up myself and got certified from them because I was in love with their research, like 35 or something years of scientific research about the heart coherency, the intelligence of the heart, and how we can how to connect the brain and the heart and to balance our nervous system. There's so many things that came out of that. So I ended up just taking my framework and just draw sort of a red thread with the heart math through that. So that's in a nutshell, like my technique and tools that I work with clients today.
amazing.
Mhm.
The probably the most broad spectrum of the creative industry doesn't really understand heart math. Um, and I don't hear it often, but I do hear it. I understand what it is. I have the device myself. Um,
Okay, cool.
I have I have a difficulty with the breathing component
Hmm.
of working with it.
Yeah.
So it just kind of sits a lot of times. But I know this is a topic of discussion in the mental health space as
Hmm.
well, as because there's a lot of study and work going into looking at the heart as the true brain versus the brain in our skull, that being the secondary brain. Um, but
Absolutely.
but linking those together does tremendous things within a person's constitution as well as helping their mental health. For the audience, could you just give a little bit more description of what heart math is and what are the benefits of heart math?
Yeah. Yeah. The heart rate variability. So if you think about your heart and it is very often not in coherency, but you can have so much control over that. So there is one exercise, for example, that's called quick coherence that they teach. And that is simply you breathe, you sort of picture your heart, your chest area, put your focus there, and you start breathing in deeper and slower than usual. And then you start to focus on heart opening feelings as compassion, love, gratitude. And once you start to do that, your heart will find its coherency and it will go into parasympathetic nervous system. That's where you are aligned and you connect with the brain. And this is where you tap into your intelligence or intuition really as well.
Yeah.
And it's the only state we should be in when we're making decisions, for example, and always to realign ourselves. Because when we're not in that coherency, we're not, our nervous system is not parasympathetic, then it's sympathetic. And then you're in that fight or flight, which we human beings are in majority of the time. We're just not paying attention.
Right.
So we're wearing ourselves out. But with that one coherency exercise, we can align and connect. And the heart, like you said earlier, is like that brain because the heart sends so much more information to the brain than the brain to the heart. And most of us do not know that. I certainly did not know that.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
that sort of in a nutshell, it's really to connect the brain and the heart and to be aligned and connected, to have access to your heart and really to nurture your nervous system
Right.
because
Right.
that's everything. And so when you are aligned and your nervous system is aligned and you have the device, there's also what everybody can actually download this and there's now a new feature where you sort of put the finger on the light
Okay.
and it reads that way. So even if you don't have the little device, you can still
Okay.
do it. And I think you can try it out for free for a month or so.
Yeah.
What's just really cool about it is that when you are in that coherency, you're also sending off different energy.
Right.
And so that mirrors the everything externally.
Yeah.
So, speaking of attracting new things into our lives, and that's energy, and different energy will find you as well. It's not,
Right.
it's really the consistency because it's not, and it can be very, you don't feel like doing it or I'll do it later. But even if you don't use the device all the time, you can do the breath just like that throughout the day. I mean, I do it on the subway. Uh, but I'm often like when I start my day, because I think that when we start our day, we're sort of not necessarily, it's like we wake up with something that, a fear or, something is going to, shit's going to go down.
Yeah.
There's just something that we wake up with like, oh my God, what's happening? So it's very normal that you're in the red versus green, which is the highest, blue is sort of in the middle.
Yeah.
But it's our job to just to train that and to let go of that morning fear. And, the more we do it, the better we get at it.
Right. Right. Exactly. And with incorporating that into your evoke system as well for creatives, different companies, different individuals, are you seeing that there's huge changes that take place for your clients?
Yeah, I believe that people being introduced to this is just like a big deal.
Yeah.
And put into that world that I, set up for them in that storytelling that story mapping that they're, creating the story they want to live and lead.
Hmm.
Um, and being aware, having awareness of that your nervous system and your heart and brain are speaking that is massively like powerful for them to take it with them. Not everybody is gonna, a lot of people also are just gonna put it in a drawer and not necessarily, but once they've learned this, you cannot not know it. So there's
Right.
always, even if you're not super enthusiastic about it, you will have that awareness forever about it because it's just that powerful.
Yeah. When intuition became something that you started really tapping into or became aware of, was there any specific thing or moment in your life when you realized, oh, this is a different level of connection?
Yeah, great question. I think I always knew that I had something. Like I didn't know if everyone was like this or if it was just me.
Yeah.
but I often knew something I wasn't necessarily supposed to know, or felt things. I was very much into like, I knew when people were talking shit about someone, even if they're, like from
Yeah.
an early age,
Yeah. Yeah.
stuff like that. And then also just knowing something and being able to create something in my head and then find it, or, that was also so kind of powerful to come up with something and then I would see it. And I think, for example, when I was in Seattle, that's before thrift shopping was like trendy and people wanted these old clothes. Um, I would just like create something in my head or it would come from somewhere, intuition. And then I would drive like 30 minutes to the thrift store, like by the airport that nobody went to that had any sort of, interest in this stuff. And I would walk out with like garbage bags, like big black ones, like too full.
Yeah.
And I would like sell part of it because they were like a vintage store that was reselling so I knew what they wanted and then I would keep for myself as well. So that
Right.
was one of his, like I could just like sense and feel and like that was sort of because that became my meal ticket, those buying those thrift store because I resold a lot of them.
Yes.
Um, so that was like one thing. And yeah, I think when I learned, so okay, so let me tell you this, like in Iceland, intuition is talked about and
Okay.
always has been talked about.
Interesting.
Yeah. So it's insight, which is really beautiful word and meaning like you look in, like the sea within.
Yes.
Uh, and it can be also as an ocean, like you have like the water ocean, so you can play with that word a little bit. But it is talked about, and so is weird beliefs of like elves and
Yeah.
hidden
Yeah.
figures and
Yeah.
hidden people. And we go and see mediums and fortune tellers and that's sort of almost like the norm. Not everybody does it, but a lot of people do. And I
Yeah.
still do occasionally see someone like that. And
Mhm.
so we're very open about intuition. It's not that for us that's a fact. Not
Yes.
everybody believes in the elves and the hidden people,
Right.
but most people do not believe either. But I believe that most everyone talks about or is aware of intuition, though, because that's kind of the only thing we had.
Right. Right. Again, another fascinating component about the understanding and curiosity of culture, right? Cultures of
Yeah,
different people.
right.
I know in Native culture, there's a belief in all of connection throughout the world and the earth, and to the
Yeah.
animals, and to the spirits, and all of that type of stuff. Um, Myself personally, um, I believe in those things. I wasn't
Mhm.
raised believing those things, but very early on, I was able to see spirits
Okay.
as a child, and I wasn't able to express that to anybody
Wow.
because
Yeah.
I didn't have anybody that I was seeing a similar take. Right,
Hmm.
nobody around me was experiencing that, so I just thought I was weird. Um, and then
Hmm.
after a while, it just kind of disconnected, which I think at probably about 7, 8 years old. I know in native culture at 7 and 8 that there is a transition from that connectedness to the other world at that age.
Yeah.
So that
Right.
kind of starts to dissipate.
Hmm.
Over the last few years, just with doing the healing work that I've done for myself, that has come back a little bit more. Um,
Okay.
so I'm completely open to that. Um, I find it fascinating, especially when it's already built into a culture and a society, um,
Yeah.
because it allows for more opportunity, I think, uh, and understanding as well.
Yeah. There's a compassion that sort of comes with that, I think, as well, that and the connectiveness. Um, But that's fascinating that you were seeing spirits. And
Yeah.
have you started to see again or like,
Yes,
yeah.
not as often. as I did as a child,
Hmm.
but I am able to sense them a lot sooner, a lot quicker.
Yeah. Yeah, that's fascinating. I've seen sort of like shadows. I haven't seen like,
Okay. Yeah.
but there was one time, maybe almost 10 years ago, I was in Italy with my husband. I was also very raw during that time. My daughter was really going through a hard time then, so I was very raw.
Yeah.
But I was just talking to this older gentleman on next table for a while, and he didn't really speak. I remember I was putting together like a little bit of French, and then I mean, not Icelandic, English, and just sort of a piece together. We're trying to speak together for a little while, and we kind of understood each other. And then, and my husband's like, "Who are you talking to?" I was like, "The guy over here." He's like, "There's nobody there." So before or after, I have never experienced anything like that.
Oh wow.
That was like an actual person that I thought was there.
Yeah.
But yeah, I would never, but I've, felt energy and maybe a shadow or something like that. But that's it. Yeah. So
Yeah.
that was the wildest, I don't know if I was that tired, I was hallucinating or actually was, I don't know.
Yeah. But well, at that point there was just a sense of being able to see through the veil, so to speak,
Yeah.
where you have
Yeah.
that connection with a
Right.
different energy. Um,
Yeah. Yeah.
does does the Icelandic culture come into play with your evoke system, or does it have a little bit of foundation in your culture?
Yeah, absolutely. It's placed with those. So when we're talking about the like or for everyone, like roots are really important. Like the earth part, that's the roots. We dive into the roots, like where you came from and like how you feel about your birthplace and
Yeah,
the role you played in your family and all these things that cultural events that were around, when you're a child.
yeah,
So it plays in that way, like when I was building this and I tested it for 2 years, with different people before I started to like sell my services. It came in that way that it came from, I saw where it came from me in that way. Like I was thinking about like my roots in that way
hmm,
and just the way of thinking. And then I also think about there's part of the goals, the objective part, because I find it often that people have like big shiny dreams and then they just have goals that are very almost like a bullet point, like a check off shopping list almost, very
yeah,
realistic.
yeah,
And I feel like because of how I grew up and my story, I'm helping people merge those two. Like the dream doesn't have to be so far away and shiny and, go, meet yourself at least halfway or even,
yeah,
go further up. So I guess not Icelandic per se, but very based on my story, my experience, like
yeah.
how I approach things. Yeah, in
Okay.
that way. And then it's very like, the story mapping part, we're just like, we're building a film. So it is, yeah, it's really connected to this story, like how we've been talking about today, like how I created my world in that way.
Yeah,
Yeah, and then it's just so it sort of it fits everybody. Like, you put your story in it. It's your but just how I speak and go about it is just, probably just authentic to me. Yeah.
for sure. I love that. And the reason I say that is because that's kind of how I've modeled this podcast.
Yeah.
It's just walking through somebody's storyline so that it can be an example for other creatives, right?
Uh,
And
Yeah.
pick out certain things here and there that tie across the storyline.
Yeah, you're very good at that. Like,
Thank you. Thank you. I appreciate that. And I just try to highlight those things so that any creative that's out there that's feeling alone or feeling like they're the only ones experiencing something,
mm-hmm.
there's another creative that they have and they can hear and listen to that see their trajectory and understand, oh, well, I'm not so different. I see some things
Yeah.
that are happening in there that are, something that I can pull from for my life.
Yeah,
Uh,
that's a beautiful thing. And it is very, it is being creative, being an artist, it's a mindset that we often feel alone or misunderstood and, unseen. These elements are very common. So for you to offer this space and people can, listen in and get ideas and advice, it's a beautiful, it's very generous of you to do that.
Thank you. Thank you. That's greatly appreciated. I think that's a great place for us to be able to end today as well.
Okay.
And at the end of each episode, I always want to remind the audience to listen to their heart, but also be kind to their mind.
Love that.